Well, the chickens are as pleased to be out this morning as I am. And we've had some pretty torrential rain. And last night and yesterday we had some pretty horrific winds as well. So the plot is very wet indeed. But I am going to make use of this little bit of dry weather we're having. The rhubarb seems to have just keeled over. It's had its day. And I'm going to clear up the leaves today. But I did notice that there's just a small amount of new growth down here, which is quite interesting. But looking around the plot, this net got blown off, and I think that's going to get my attention today. I may well sort this bed out. The parsnips certainly got blown over. They're that much lower than they were, but most of the crops seem to survive. And it's interesting to see that the leeks are standing up now. After taking the beans down, they were all laying down on the soil. We've had a few bits of wind damage. Looks like we've blown away my wind guard, and in here it's blown over some of the barriers that I use for the compost. I need to do something a bit more constructive with this polythene. It kept in place with the weights I've put on it, but I think I need to fold that up now, or at least use it somewhere. We had to come out and put the tarpaulin back on the chicken pen, at least some of it. We've put these cable ties on because it was starting to blow off on the corners. These elasticated holders just break. The elastic is perished, so it looks like we're going to have to use cable ties on that to keep it down more permanently. The chickens area is a bit of a mud bath, but they don't seem to worry too much, and it'll dry out pretty quick. Down here the wormery lid is blown off. Well, that's not too difficult a problem to resolve. Need to put a rock on that. I think we'll use this fella here. Yeah, so it certainly looks like those storms bashed the plot for a few hours. I know that one of the covers on the squash beds blew off. And in my video the other day I said that this was a bit of a problem during the course of the winter. But I think what I'm going to do is use some of these rocks that I'm not using right now just to secure the edges of this. And that'll save me having to do the recovery job every now and then. You can see the water down here, it's incredible. It really is just wood chip suspended in water. So I'm going to need to be careful today, otherwise I'll very easily churn up the grass. I wonder whether I left the lawn or the grass area too long, but now I'm beginning to think it was the right thing to do. It'll just enable me to walk on it a bit more during the winter months. One of the bed covers here obviously pulled away from the rocks, so I need to have a look at that. And this old cold frame took a bashing as well, so I might need to work out the best thing to do to recover that. So a few things to do on the plot today. Well, there's a bit of a chill in the air today, so I'm gonna get going, see if I can warm up a little bit, and we'll get this net off. It's taken a fair old amount of wind to blow that net off, and it blew the bar across, which just trapped the net. So get that out. There's a pair, still in reasonable order as well. So the nets will go away. I put them in a container down by the compost bins for the winter, and they dry out and keep well down there. So we've got one solitary cabbage left, or part of one, which is going to go into the chickens. And then I'm going to start getting this weed out of this bed before I cover it up. So that warmed me up a bit, which is a good thing. Now that grass that I've taken out of there, it was quite interesting because it wasn't grass developed by runners. It was all self-seeded from this grass that's on the back of the bed, which, if you've been a long time viewer of mine, you know that the plan is to remove that whole bank during this winter. So I think probably there will be more seed in this bed, grass seed, which could well be a problem as I carry on, and I'm just going to have to weed it as I see it. But I'm hopeful that the normal layer of mulch over the top of this will suppress it. So I've taken out pretty much everything I can. I'm just going to rake it, and if I see any more grass, we'll take that out, and then that'll prepare it ready for mulching. There we go. Just wanted to keep you up to date on the competition. So the competition for the books, and I'm going to do the draw for that this coming weekend. So hopefully on Sunday's upload you'll see who won. At least I'll give you their first names, and we'll draw those out of the hat randomly. Anybody who wants to go into the free book competition, I'll link the video above here. So it's going to take probably 2, maybe even 3 of these to cover over this bed, and then we'll get the plastic on. Right, well, we'll try with 2. Well, that looks plenty to me. So we'll just tidy up the edges and get that covered. Well, there we are, that's all covered up for the winter, and that will stop the rain leaching out the goodness. I've put a few extra bricks down to hopefully stop it from blowing away during the winter months. And hopefully when I open this in the springtime, this bank will have been gone and access to this bed will be a lot easier. We'll see. Well, these 2 beds have still got things in them, beetroot and some turnips, which are actually turning into swede, and we're going to use those like we do swede. So I'm going to work these as half beds, get the nets halfway up, and just get the weed out of the 2 back ends and cover them up with some mulch and get a cover on top of them. And working half beds at a time is just fine. And if I need to take a few crops just to get an even line, I'll do that. So off with the nets, out with the weeds, in with the mulch. Well, I can't tell you how easy it is to get the weed out of this. They really pull out so simply, and it takes just minutes. Now the mare's tail will be in here forever, but as long as we keep on top of it, then it's not a problem. So I've had a few beetroot out of here, and we'll just get this raked over, and then we'll have a go at this fella. Do exactly the same. Well, that's those two beds, or half beds, sorted out. And it occurred to me while I was doing that, one of the other big advantages of having raised bed like this and having chippings around it is that you can work on it during this really wet weather and during the winter. And sure, it's getting a bit turfed up there where I'm walking around, but that'll easily recover. Whereas the grass, where I've been moving the wheelbarrow, is already on its way to turning to mud, and I need to be really careful I don't churn it up too much. So I need to get a layer of compost on those two halves of beds, and I'm not going to need a lot. You can see they're already right to the rim, so just a small covering, and then cover them up, stop the weed growth and protect them for the winter. So it's a game of chess now on the allotment. I need to get this mulch onto the beds, and I need to release the bay that the mulch is in to get the compost pile that I've been creating into the base of that bay that I've emptied, and then that will give me the space to start clearing up the composting area, and then ultimately just getting more of that mulch onto the beds so that I can get ready for taking new manure, horse manure in. So let's get this one onto these two. I think we'll put half on that one and half on this one, and I think that'll be enough. So there we are. These beds are quite full, but they will settle down during the winter months underneath the polythene cover. Now I don't put any special half covers on this. I just put the full cover and fold it back and put the bricks on it, and then I'll get the net back over the top, pin that down, and these two beds will keep going now until I'm ready to take out the rest of the crops. Now I've covered this subject before, but if you're wondering what I do with regards to the winter crops and the mulching, you get to a point where you need the mulch on the bed, and if the crops are still in the ground, there's nothing short of working the compost in between the crops, and that's fine. It's all about replenishing the soil. So if you're having to work around a few remaining crops, no big deal. Well, it's early November, and we've had a couple of these celeriac out of the bed and eaten them, and they're fabulous. But I just want to pull away the leaves and get them away from the root, and as much to tidy up as anything else. But I just figure if the leaves start to cover the roots, then what I do want is the frost to get in and sweeten up these roots. They're already great, but I think they can get even better. So as I've been doing all summer, I'm just going to take away the excess from around the bases, and that will give them some exposure. God, it smells gorgeous. Well, there's some fine looking celeriac in there, and I can now see the wood for the trees, or the ground for the celeriac leaves. And the leaves that have taken off, like this one, they're splitting, and that's a good sign that the root is growing past the leaf node, and you can take this away. And I'll leave those, and we'll be cropping those a bit more as we go through the next few months. You'll notice there's a few slugs in here, and where they exist, I remove them. It's been very interesting growing these celeriac. Now, as you know, I put a lot of time into this bed and these particular plants, and these were the largest plants when I sowed them, although not significantly different from the other bed. But what I did do is make sure there was a premium amount of space around them. You can see there's one double there, which results in two smaller celeriac. But they're all a good size, and some of these are really excellent. Now this bed, by comparison, those that are on the outside are nearly as large as the other bed. But clearly space and light has an awful lot to do with the success of this crop. As you can see, all the others are relatively small, and I think that's partly because the foliage is too close together, and I think it's partly because the plants are too close together. So it's one of those cases that you may think that you're getting more in when you're planting more plants in a bed, but you may not get as big a crop. And I think a bigger crop of less vegetables is preferable. I think on balance, that's about the optimum. And I should be planting celeriac at least 12 inches apart, and possibly 18 in the future. I'm beginning to conclude that it's been a less than ideal season for leeks. So many of them have gone to seed, and when they do that, I'll pull this one out, they really do suffer from having a hard core in the center. As you can see, a really strong seed carrying core, and none of that leek is edible. There's no point leaving them in this bed because all they're doing is using nutrients, so I'm going to take them out. Well, that's less than ideal. I'd say a third of the crop has bolted and gone to seed, and that's quite unusual. I've not experienced that before, but that's just the way gardening is, and it could be this particular bed. It's most likely the weather. There's two varieties in here, and both had started to go to seed in a fairly substantial way, so for two varieties to go like that, it sort of feels like it's been the climate this year that's caused that to happen. There we are, that's growing. Great celeriac, not so great leeks, but we'll still have plenty to feed us during the course of the winter months. Well, I think I'm done for the day. It's been good to get out. The rain's starting to come in a bit now, but these beds are nicely pinned down with the rocks. Makes good use of these rocks while I'm not using them. I've got plenty of groundwork to do in there with the pond, but to be honest with you, it's just too wet. So I think it's a case of get the chickens away and get home and have a cup of coffee. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.